Hey, I am Kim Townend. I am a social listening fueled cultural and social strategist. And I'm going to show you today how I use Next Atlas Generate to inform my strategies and give me some really useful starting points to dig deeper into specific data with other types of tools and insights. So today I am interested in finding out everything I can about horror, given we're approaching spooky season. So I usually start by asking Generate a really broad question before I start to narrow down as I go through. So I'm probably going to ask something like, what can you tell me about the rise of horror? So, as you can see, you get some really useful top line data that will allow you to understand a bit more about the bigger themes and start allowing you to figure out where you want to focus your search. So here we're seeing people talking about the cinematic world. We're seeing that we're expecting horror movies to rise by 26% within a year. And then also the indie horror is a big thing, which they're expecting an 80% surge over the next year. And then also cult horror is enjoying a renaissance. So those are three interesting things that I might want to get more information about as we go through. Also, we're looking at horror games, how they're exploding, some events that are big news. So the 50th anniversary of Texas Chainsaw, the Tim Burton Light Trail, and then also obviously TV is quite a big thing in horror now, and we're talking about the new Ryan Murphy show, Grotesquerie. Then we got a little bit of information about the current sentiment, about specific trends, so horror thrillers being a massive trend, and a little bit more about who the audience are. Then we have some of my favourite bits, which are the trends, insights and facts. So we knew that indie horror was predicted to grow over 80% year on year. This, a magic button, allows us to understand more about that specific sub-trend. So we can look at how it's expected to grow, the weekly trajectory. We can look at the concepts and tags, and I find this mega useful. Here we can see Blumhouse coming up, nightmarish, amnesia, endings, scarier, subliminal. These are the things that are trending up the most. We can also look at this by industry. So we're able to see, if I split it out by media and entertainment, there's much more conversation around Blumhouse and Hereditary. We can see where most of the conversation is coming from, and this is totally driven by the UK and the US, predominantly the US. Looking at the user interests, so we can see that pet lovers comes top, which we may not have imagined. It's people who are into nostalgia and narcissists and spirituals and eco-conscious. So it's a really interesting split of different types of personality types that are horror fans. We're seeing that it's largely driven by males and much more driven by Gen Z, the millennials and Gen X. And then I find this mood board stuff really useful as well, just to give you an idea of the kind of content that is coming up around this search. The sources that we're seeing the most conversation on, Reddit and YouTube are kind of joint leaders here. Tumblr's still involved. There's not a lot of horror happening on Instagram or Twitter. And then also we can see when people are most likely to be posting. So I find that really useful, just to give me a bit of a deeper dive into the specifics, and then I can go and take those insights and either build them out into a deck or a strategy as is, or I can take some of those insights and put them in to different social listening tools to be able to really hone in on, say, a specific hashtag. So now I know the broader trends around the rise of horror, I can start getting more specific. So tell me more about the audience for horror movies. So, looking at the audience data that it's giving us, it's showing us the generational appeal, which is pretty useful. We can see that it's largely driven by Gen Z, which is what we saw with the indie horror in particular. We can see that indie horror is the thing that's driving the most interest within Gen Z. Millennials are also interested in its cult horror that is more interesting for the millennials. And then Gen X are much more into horror thrillers, and then character-driven narratives based on their age range. We can also see which kinds of audiences are active in which territories. Motivations and psychographics, always a useful steer. Understanding why people are watching or the behaviours around watching horror. And then whether the sentiment is largely positive, negative, or indifferent. And we're seeing indie and cult having more indifferent sentiment because they're more niche, whereas horror thriller has a much more positive sentiment because they're a bit bigger. And then again, we've got those trends, facts and insights and a case study on the 50th anniversary celebration of Texas Chainsaw. One of the things that I love about Generate is that it gives you kind of hints if you're not sure what to ask next. So like at the end of this section, it asks me if I want to delve into subsegments of audiences or whether I'm interested in understanding specific elements of the horror genre. And it also allows me to like do thumbs up or thumbs down based on how I found the session, whether it was useful or not. So it's always learning. I can also either download the whole thing or summarize in a trend report, which is really useful to be able to just pull the data and dump it in a deck. Right, so now I want to ask about specific platforms. So because I've gone a bit deeper into the search, I want to let Generate know that I'm thinking about the entire horror search again now. So I'm asking, thinking about the broader horror trends, what they would recommend as a good strategy for Reddit content. So up front, it lets me know what the vibe of Reddit is, how there's a lot of niche communities here. It also tells me that I want to start identifying relevant subreddits, and it gives me some specific subreddits to think about looking at. So it's giving me r/horror, r/no sleep, r/scary movies, horror lit, creepypasta, telling me that these are the places that people go to actively discuss horror. So immediately, if I am not aware of what's happening on Reddit and the specific horror subreddits, I've got a list now that I can go and join and start to have a look at what people are sharing there to help me understand the community better. It's also telling me that there are gaming communities that are interested in horror, giving me a couple of specifics there. Movie and TV, it's just telling me that like start with the broader topics, and then also thinking about literature and publishing, where I should start looking for content around there. And then it's giving me some Reddit specific content ideas, So AMA is obviously something that works really well on Reddit, the home of the AMA. Behind the scenes content, which obviously works across platform. Exclusive previews, using UCG, and then discussion threads. Obviously, Reddit is very much a forum, so it's a conversation-based platform, so discussion threads would work really well there. Telling me how I could think about using Reddit ads, how community engagement works on Reddit, and then storytelling and narrative building. And this is where it's getting even more specific, because it's telling me that I can use creepypasta style initiatives, which would be such a Reddit thing to do. So thinking about launching serialized horror stories, it's even giving me the subreddits that I would want to publish in. It's telling me the types of content that works best on Reddit, and as somebody who uses Reddit for about 5 hours a day, I can say this is accurate. GIFs and short clips perform way better on that platform, and then also artwork and illustrations. So then at the end, it gives me a list of actionable recommendations, which, if I was not a social strategist, would be super useful. So it's saying I want to kick off with an AMA, I could do weekly discussions, running a contest, how to launch a teaser campaign, or thinking about how to build a community series. This is actually really useful data, particularly if you're not somebody who is a specialist in a particular area or a specific platform, or if you are strapped for time and you are writing a proposal and you just want to give the client like a broad outline of activities they could think about to get so that they're more likely to hire you, so you can do a deeper dive. Like, it saves a lot of my time. And also as I've said in previous videos for Next Atlas, I always cross-reference my data with social listening that I'm doing and search listening to check accuracy across all platforms and to like give a 360 view of what is happening. But I find Next Atlas such a great first step in my process. Let me just finish up by asking, I just wanted to show how it can be really useful for kind of specific aspects of campaigns that you might not be aware of. So I've asked it if there are any specific Instagram hashtags I should be using if I wanted to connect with the horror community there. So it's given me a list of 10 of the most popular horror hashtags, and then 4 genre-specific hashtags. It's given me some examples of broader categories that horror would fit into, and then 3 community-based hashtags as well. These are actually super useful ways to engage with people and get your content in front of the right audience. And then it's also giving me a couple of recommendations as to how I can use hashtags, tools that I can use to create hashtags, and the different types of hashtags I want to be using. And in terms of, it's given me a couple of use cases to let me see how some of these have been done by other brands or agencies or consultants. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed learning how I use Next Atlas, where it sits in my toolkit, how valuable I find it. I'm sorry that I said useful so many times. Okay, thanks, bye.